Hello, everyone. Bring this down. I'm a little bit short. Hard act to follow. I know that when Rebecca and Doug had asked me to speak, my first question was, what do you want me to talk about? And the response is, well, pretty much whatever you want. And so I've been really trying to reflect on what it is that I was going to talk about today. And I'm still not entirely sure what I'm going to talk about, but I will say this. So I have a lot of reflections, and I'm quite inspired by the things that I've seen. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about that. But I first have to start with 125 years. Now, United Way is in many ways a sibling organization to the National Civic League, and we have, over the years, sort of intertwined ourselves as we were started about 130 years ago here in Denver, but who's counting? But we both came out of an age of the industrialization, of big changes that were happening, of big movements of people, and finding, as urbanization was growing, a need to have something that they could come together around and support. And so you saw the rise of these organizations that we see today, United Way among those. And today, United Way is about 1,300 United Ways here in the US, about another 500 across 40 countries. And I feel like I have the best job in the organization. I get to work with United Ways around what they're doing in community. And basically what I do actually is I learn what United Ways are doing. And I know that a number of United Ways have been involved in some of the work that you all are doing. So again, I want to offer my congratulations to the finalists that were here. I'm guessing you guys have had failures along the way. I'm especially reflective on this question of failure, because it doesn't feel like we have a lot of patience for it anymore. And that one wrong move and something bad will happen. So it makes us risk averse, which is hard, because we don't necessarily need to be or want to be. But that's where we find ourselves. And so it requires even more courage. I think it takes more courage today to fail and get up than it probably ever has, because it's visible. And people will say, oh, see, I told I'm never going to work with you again. What is that? And then a bunch of swear words after that. But there is a power to getting back up after a failure. I'm reminded, actually, I wasn't even thinking about this, but Professor Matthews brought it up, and on this question of failure. My son did his first Science County Fair, and it had to do with magnets and energy and producing energy through magnets and something. And he couldn't get it to work. And no matter how much he tried, and he kept saying, Mom, those videos on YouTube are lying. You can't. And I had him and his teacher, well, all of us were trying to get him to think about the science of it. And this is where he learned how much scientists fail. And so at the end of the day, to cut to the chase, he went to a science fair and his project didn't work. And he talked about what he learned, though, even though his project didn't work. Now, he didn't win a prize, and it wasn't one of those things where everybody gets a prize. But people were appreciative of that and had patience for it. And so he didn't get the big prize because he didn't create something big that worked, but he talked about what he learned as a result of his failure. So now I'm ready to let him go off into the world, even though he's only 13. I think he's ready for college, so I'm very, very proud of him. Okay, so I'm just gonna talk for a little while, and I don't know if it's all gonna make sense or not. But we do live in a time that is polarizing, for sure. I see it when I travel around the country, and I see it in the world. When I travel outside of the U.S., I get a lot of, what's happening with you guys over there in the U.S.? What's going on? This is things that we commonly will see in other parts of the world, but we seem to be seeing it here. And I do think that there is a lot of courage, and there is still a lot of fear. And what I see in this room, and I got to sit in on some of the sessions this morning, is about courage. Because it's easy to come from a place of fear. It's easy to make decisions from a place of fear. It's much harder to come at this from a place of courage. And so today I sat in on the youth. Who sat in on the youth session this morning? You know, there was a way that folks talked about it and the young people talked about it. There was a good reminder, which was nothing about us without us. Did I get that right? Nothing about us without us. I do think that we are in a time where there is declining trust in institutions. We talk about institutions. Across the board, we see it. In government, in our faith institutions, in community organizations, and a lot of it for some good reasons. And otherwise, I do think that there is something to that we ought to be thinking about. I think that today more than ever, people do feel a sense of agency. They do feel a power. Everyone talks about the power of the consumer. You know, everything is the Airbnb and the Lyft, and everything is about people being able to make their own choices. I think that's powerful, and I think that's not such a bad thing. It has upended many of our institutions. It certainly has upended United Way. And our question in our community and United Way is, what is your real relevance today? As I go around and I talk to people in the country and where there once upon a time had been a power to United Way or even philanthropy, but in United Way of raising money in the workplace and giving it to organizations, that's not so powerful today. It's not so relevant today. Because you can take your phone out, you can find out of any organization you want, anywhere in the world, and give to that organization and have that person thank you, all from your phone. So if that's the case, and people are leaning into causes, things that they believe in, so I talked to United Ways, I asked them, what if the allocations or your grant making was the least important thing you did? What if it was the least important thing that you did? Well, one, a bunch of community organizations would be mad, but let's put that aside for a moment. What would come up for you in terms of how to be relevant in your community? And I see it in here. It is sitting at the table and really listening. It is then using your resources to build capacity and to amplify the voices of people in community. And just as a side note, I know I don't have to say this to this audience, I'm constantly saying, please don't say that people bring voice to the voiceless. I can't stand that, because everyone's got voice. So whether anyone's listening to that voice. All right, so if it's amplifying, how about you just listen? Who's listening? And that's the thing. That's what I love about the young people that I heard this morning, and the folks that were doing the health equity work, is if you put people at the middle of what you're doing, and you are coming at it from a place of humility and open-heartedness, and you're really listening, what might change about what you do? It's a question that I had asked. It's a question that I always ask is, if you come into a room thinking you're just going to check the box, okay, I had a community conversation, I'm going to keep doing what I was going to do anyway, don't be surprised when people don't show up again. And you all know that. You know that. So I feel like I'm going to preach to the choir, sing along if you'd like, but this is, I know, because you all have been doing this important work of putting community at the center and staying there. And sometimes that can be really hard, and sometimes you're going to hear stuff that you don't want to hear, and it's going to challenge you, but it's the right thing to do, and it's the way that you're going to achieve success today. And so when I talk to United Ways, I talk to them about doing that. Now, we at United Way like to have everything wrapped up in a nice bow, have control over the situation that's going on. We want to have the narrative, all these other kinds of things, because that's nice and clean, very simple. And it's a lot messier to do it the other way. And it takes time. It takes time, and that's the other thing we struggle with, is not feeling like we've got the time, because you crash up against, hey, these problems are serious, and we need urgency. Today during the health equity summit, in the health equity breakout session, we talked about making sure that there's action attached to what you're hearing. Even if they're small actions, it's important to tie the things together, because otherwise it's going to turn into navel-gazing or conversations for the sake of conversations. But conversations with the purpose of moving forward together, even if it's going to take a little bit of longer time, is what's critically important. So I think about and we do a lot of this within United Way, is what does a modern 21st century United Way that was built 130 years ago look like today? And so increasingly we're putting the question and the work around equity in the midst of that. Not always an easy conversation to have. I have been in this space for a while, and so I would not say that I'm that much more accomplished than anyone else. But again, if you come into it with humility and the willingness to learn and to just understand where my own biases come in, it can really open up opportunities. And so we're working with United Ways on how to do that. We're working with United Ways around who they're hiring, who's on their board, who are their leaders, to be reflective of the communities that they're in. To lead the communities that they're in, but just to be in that space. Sometimes being in a space with communities, some people talk about being at the table. Whose table? I always encourage United Way, it may not be your table. And in fact, you may not even be invited for a while. Prove your value. It's not your table, so you don't go out and create another table just because you're mad because you didn't get into this table, but you've got to understand where are people sitting. And that's the space that I'm asking our colleagues to be in. And so I'm encouraged by what I see. I love what actually I'm seeing in this space today, and I'm grateful to the United Ways that are working with all of you and the finalists as you've been doing this. And I hear you practicing out there, and I see you, and it's been incredibly impressive. We've been in this partnership and collaboration with the National Civic League. I'm a proud member of the board, about a year now. And it signals our collaboration, because we have to be more collaborative than we've ever been before if we're going to partner. And we looked to the National Civic League, actually, who's been doing a lot of work around equity, to help us, to share resources and tools around having the hard conversations. Not that, well, someday we need to have a hard conversation. No, you're going to have a hard conversation right now, and it's not going to be comfortable, and that's going to be okay. And what are the commitments that we make to each other? And so it's been a fantastic opportunity to have Doug and Rebecca and the rest of the staff working with us and helping us and lighting a path for us as we've been thinking about this work. And I hope take from that lessons that we can do with other United Ways and other partners. You know, as Brian Gallagher, who's our CEO, we had our national big conference, and he was talking about what is it that people need to have in order to be successful. And he talked about 3 things that I would leave you with, which I think you're doing. Everyone needs to feel safe. If you're going to be successful in anything that you do, you need to be safe. Safe from violence in your home and in your community, safe in your relationships. You need to have a sense of safety. I've never seen someone who's not safe be successful. You need to have that kind of financial stability. As Brian says, not to have, like, you know, money beyond all kind of money that we see about, but just enough so that you can feel safe and that your family and your children can succeed. And the last thing that I'm especially drawn to is this notion of feeling connected. Human beings need to feel connected to something. Which is interesting because it's the tension between, we want to exercise our own sovereignty. You can't be the boss of me. I want to be able to make my own decisions. I'm an independent person. that connected to, but I need something else. My family, my community. And sometimes people do it in all kinds of ways. You may feel connected to a gang. You may feel connected to other things that are maybe not so legally being done. But we're hoping that you get connected to a cause that's larger than yourself. People want to feel connected to something bigger. Whether that's in the US or whether it's as global citizens or whether it's connection to your neighbors, there's got to be something there. So as institutions, I think our challenge is to find ways to have people connected to one another. Not necessarily connected to you, your institution, but connected to one another. And I see here, and I constantly talk to United Ways about creating that space where people feel safe and that they can feel the connection with one another. And they're doing that. And, you know, some more successful than others, and they learn from each other. And so in this space, I hope that you'll continue to learn from each other and to challenge each other and to celebrate. It's important to celebrate. So I'm so pleased to be here, and I congratulate you again and look forward to the next couple of days. Thank you very much.